Hi, so I need help.
I really don't know exactly what happened. I don't know what the sequence of events were that catapulted her into this abyss, this feeling that she couldn't go on.
So much of my brain and body has been broken down.
She changed over the years and became darker.
Do you even care?
There needs to be an investigation as to any other actors who were involved with this that might have played a role. I feel like I should have tried much harder.
I never stopped trying. I never stopped.
Hi, this message is for Eileen. This is calling from the Tummy Temple. This is my personal line. I'm happy to give you a call back tomorrow from the Tummy Temple line too if I don't hear back from you. But I did get to speak to the director of a sacred passing, and I think we have the clearest path forward. So just wanted to check in. Okay, thank you.
Was Eileen's aunt, the aunt that she was closest to. She showed up on my doorstep many times over the years. Eileen was born to two mentally ill people who were both abusive in different ways. Her father was sexually abusive, and her mother was mentally and somewhat physically abusive and negligent. So she had a very, very sad origin. She was born in the Antelope Valley in California and spent a little time there. Then she moved to Bakersfield. She had a hard time there. They lived in a bad neighborhood. She got bullied. She was very vulnerable.
Baby spiders. Oh my God.
She was really smart, empathetic, honest, and genuine. You didn't have to put on an act for her. She could understand really deep pain and sorrow.
I feel like this really deep call, like suffering in the world. There's still a lot, and I just feel like I want to help before it's too late.
She had a lot of personality, and she was very resourceful. She was always up for some kind of prank, and Sarah loved to put her up to things.
Who's Sarah?
Sarah's my daughter, Eileen's cousin. They were very close once upon a time. They were both only children, so they, played together a lot when they were youngsters.
Crazy for thinking that my love could hold you.
But Eileen, she changed over the years and became just darker, very fixated on certain beliefs. She talked, a lot about her trauma and that it was trapped in her womb. Her trauma was trapped in her womb.
I have done a lot here, but I haven't received what I need, and I need to, so I'm not trapped. So if there's anyone out there that can help with this, I mean someone that's deeply skilled in the worst shit imaginable, whatever's been going on, it needs to just go. That way we can all get to where we need to be, and we're no longer endlessly, because it's just too much. Because I'm not gonna stick around forever.
She was going to school for a while, doing well, tried different jobs, and then I don't know what the sequence of events were that kind of catapulted her into this abyss, this feeling that, she couldn't go on.
I look so weird, but it doesn't matter how I look. So much of my brain and body has been broken down and barely surviving taking care of myself all this time.
She showed no interest in her appearance or her hygiene. She would show up on my doorstep and she had not bathed in I don't know how long. I would have to force her to bathe, and I still have a bar of soap of hers in my bathroom, actually. And I would get exasperated with her. She just didn't know any better. She really didn't. She wasn't raised with any, how do you properly take care of yourself? You don't steal. You clean up after yourself. She wasn't raised with any of those. So she was ultimately just like a child, like her mother.
I'm in terrible shape. I have been for a while. I'm bedridden most days. I'm covering my face because I I have like bad facial hair right now. I haven't been able to take care of myself for a while. I've just been laying in bed most days. But, you know, just consuming a lot of social media and processing my own stuff for survival.
Was she diagnosed with anything officially that you're aware of?
I believe it was borderline, maybe schizoaffective. She would get just fixated that if she could get this healing, just go in circles with that. They created this system here a few years ago, 988, which is just for mental health emergencies. And I called that and they really didn't do anything. I mean, I feel it's a shame that some people can't be committed, at least on a temporary basis. I pleaded with her to take medication, you know, that she just didn't believe it. She was anti-psychiatry. It was more like, you know, like if I could just get all this healing, all this psychic healing. She had obtained a gun at one point. She couldn't go through with it. She also found out about something called voluntary stopping eating and drinking. She tried that, but she could only make it like 2 or 3 days. And then she was trying to get her mom to take a loan out so she could go to Europe. She knew that the Netherlands allowed euthanasia for mental illness. So she had to be in her bonnet about that. And I guess she had tried different things to raise funds. At some point, she realized she was going to be able to pull it off here. And I don't know what changed to make her realize that she was going to be able to pull it off. But she found a way.
Oregon became the first state in the country to legalize medically assisted suicide when voters approved the Death with Dignity Act in 1994.
If you are terminally ill and you live in Washington, you can, by law, take your own life. It's been that way since 2009.
Eileen was able to fraudulently obtain some lethal medications through the Death with Dignity Act, which was designed for people who are within 6 months of dying from a terminal illness. How she got access to those drugs is a little bit mystifying to us still, because the law is supposed to be very strict. She just slid through the cracks. You know, they did not verify that she was terminally ill, that she was a resident of Washington State. They did not have 2 doctors document, you can sign off on this. They did not have a waiting period. It just should not have happened if it was as strict as it was intended to be, as it was written to be. My niece was a very intelligent young woman, but you know, she wasn't a genius. That's really the point. It wasn't that hard for her to exploit it. And that's really dangerous. My brother Blaze called me and he sounded unsure. He said, "Did you hear about Eileen?" And no. Julie said she's killed herself. And I was kind of, you know, in shock and I didn't really believe it. But I went over to my sister's apartment and saw her and she confirmed that the coroner or whoever had called. And then me and Sarah went to collect her belongings and found that those prescriptions and those instructions had been left in the hotel room. The prescriptions for the lethal medications, a whole laundry list of medications, morphine, and what shocked us was the instructions on how to use these to end your own life, and we didn't understand how she possibly could have gotten those. Eileen had forged some documents and impersonated a doctor in California and was able to procure the medications in Washington State from a pharmacist with the belief that she had stage 4 cervical cancer.
Did she have stage 4 cervical cancer?
No, she was in perfect physical health. Then, you know, we got our phone and was doing all this, finding all this information. And at one point we talked to the woman at Sacred Passages on the phone. It's some organization in Washington that I think helps with assisted suicide, death doula services. And we talked to her, and I just, it was just kind of surreal because she said Eileen was very sad. And I just found it odd, maybe, that it sounded like there'd been communication with this person. I think she was deeply conflicted. She said, I don't really want to die. I just don't know what else to do. She definitely didn't want to live the life she was living. The quality of life was low, and she didn't want that. But she also didn't really want to die.
What did you think of the pharmacist and the pharmacy that provided this prescription to Eileen?
Well, I think he was extremely negligent and lax. I don't think it was like a deliberate thing, but, he should be held accountable. I placed more guilt on the Death with Dignity people. I reached out to Death with Dignity, and they did not respond in a way that I thought was human. Like, they didn't want to take any accountability. They didn't want to be sobered by this. Like, they should have been shocked. They should have responded in such a way that this was unacceptable, and they needed to try to do something to tighten this so it doesn't happen in the future. And there needs to be an investigation as to any other actors who were involved with this that might have played a role. If there were people who are involved in the right to death movement who believe it should be liberalized for mental illness. A beautiful, bright young woman just is gone. Her life's just gone. And because of the best intentions of this policy that started out with the best intentions is, as they say, the road to hell is paved with the best intentions, but this is what happened. This needs to be looked at. Needs to be scrutinized, needs to be brought out into the open so somebody else doesn't have to lose a precious person.
And I'm crazy for loving